Need a sip of coffee first.
Make that 2.
Okay. Since you insist. You know, I'm tempted to leave that in the intro.
Yeah, no. That works. Go for it.
Sure. As you can see, this is a very random episode, so we're just starting with random. Welcome to Music Arcade. Why not?
Yeah, no, fair. It's coffee arcade, it's music arcade, it's whatever we want. It's our podcast, damn it.
It's all a podcast, damn it. Unfortunately, we are going to talk about actual music. Or fortunately.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
Yeah, I was about to say, that makes no sense. More coffee!
Yeah, no.
Hello, everyone.
Basically, we had to settle on plans right before recording and went with essentially, heck it, we're doing it live, and I totally cut your attempt at an intro, sorry.
You did!
I did.
Welcome,
everyone, this is Galen Firestone, and I am Ranakel.
Hi, welcome again to Music Arcade, the podcast about game music that is gone completely off the rails, in more ways than one today.
You can't get off the rails if you don't put rails in the first place.
Which is exactly the plan for today. Once again, we are without Eddie. He had some last minute, just an insane blast of work. So we had to push back our planned episode until next week. So we're doing this little bonus episode here in the middle here, just to make sure we have an upload schedule that's at least somewhat consistent.
Think of it as an expanded now playing.
Music Arcade, now playing. Okay.
Yeah, okay, we're doing the jingle and everything, alright.
Hey, I'm still a sound editor. I'm not going to stop doing that just because we're in random mode, okay?
Yeah, no, that's fair, all credit to you.
So even though we're technically now playing, I want to kind of continue the intro, talk about last week. I did a little more playing around with sound effects than I usually do in last week's episode. I hope that wasn't too much for you guys. I didn't actually hear any feedback, so I don't know. Please let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, feedback is important.
It is.
It helps us improve, and it helps us feel heard and good and all that.
Yeah. We've been doing this for, what, a year and a half now? It's been a while.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love this show. I want to keep seeing it improve and grow and gain fans, and the best way to do that is to hear from fans as to what they want or what we could be doing better.
I love this show enough that I'm here recording in the info. We have no plans because I just like talking about video game music, man.
Exactly.
And they keep making more of it.
They do. We're going to be talking about that at length because there's some upcoming that are going to be really awesome. But for now, let's talk about what just happened. We just had an FF14 patch, so... Man, okay, so I'm just going to come out and say it right out of the gate. I like this patch way better than basically anything that's happened in anything happened in Endwalker since basically Garlemald.
No, so you like going to Italy then?
There's that joke again. Yes, everything's Italian. This is all a big FF4 reference. Duh, but yes, I like going to, quote-unquote, Italy. I would like to see Venice one day. But for now, I have the Felcroat of Troya, which, you know... You got the great FF4 remixes, including a random active FF4 boss music in the boss fight. God, that made me happy.
Yeah, I take it. Yeah. What also made me happy was dropping that orchestral roll on the first go.
Oh, lucky you! I haven't even seen it yet. I've seen the wind-up Scarmiglione, but I have not seen the Orchestrion yet.
Yeah, no, very happy with that. And what mostly struck me was the fact that they kept us in the dungeon for a very long sequence where we get to explore and everything, and it really gives it that weight about what we've done, which wasn't just a little trip and then we're back.
Oh yeah, no, I was actually like really pleased with the content of this X-Pack. This is kind of what I've been hoping for from patches in this game, basically since the beginning. This felt like a 0.3, which is to say a serious required segment, but it was only a 0.2, which means they're finally going off of their very tried and true and frankly rather stagnant formula.
Yeah, they're trying stuff, and I'm very happy about that. Of course.
And they're trying stuff with the music, too. Like, again, the great remixes of FF4 are wonderful, but the new tracks are pretty great as well. We had the new raid tier, which is actually really good. One of my biggest complaints about Asphodelos, the prior raid tier, was that the music was just bad.
I like how oppressive it was. I will admit, even though I like it, and I will say I even like it a little bit better than this tier.
Okay.
But after farming for weeks and weeks on end, that feeling of oppression really gets to you in a negative way.
I guess I may have been more okay with at least the first song if it was only for one boss.
Yes.
But the fact that it was for all three and it sounded like a dirge or a death march the entire time, I'm just like, shut up already.
Which is why I appreciate that for this tier, they did a variation between the first round and the two in the middle.
Yes, I'm actually very happy about the variety of music in this one. I will say I've heard it compared to Evanescence more than once, and I actually take great umbrage to that comparison. And this is me not actually hating Evanescence.
Yeah, it's people that don't listen to enough metal, clearly.
Like, where
I've heard comparison to Lacuna Coil.
That's a little closer, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it kind of in the same realm as, like, the Karma Code album. I could see that happening. Yeah, that actually tracks in my brain. But Evanescence does not sound anything like this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Again, this is not me dissing Evanescence. They're fine. They're a fine band if you like their sound. They are the ones that essentially got me into... I'm going to go ahead and tell this story, as embarrassing as it might be. Once upon a time, I was ditching high school, and I went to go see the Daredevil movie in the theater, because I lived near a movie theater at the time, so I'm like, this will kill a few hours while I'm supposed to be studying history.
Yeah.
And they played a few Evanescence songs in that widely derided movie, and I'm like, oh... this is an interesting band, let me check them out. And then I actually got so into them, however briefly, that I went and checked out their demos, and their demos are completely different from the studio sound entirely. Like, if they kept going the demo route... Yeah, if they kept going the demo route, they would be very adjacent to the music I actively listen to today. Like, I could see them as a precursor to, like, Delayed, or a precursor to... like, if they toured with Early Within Temptation, it wouldn't be weird with that sound.
Yeah, and... to add in my own bit of experience, I am certainly not going to deride you for that, because my entry points into appreciating the little bit of metal that I do appreciate was a very standard route of that one Nickelback track into Evanescence, into Nightwish, and then some other stuff in that domain.
Fair enough, yeah,
you gotta have respect for the entry points.
You do. You absolutely have to have respect for the entry points. This is a mild tangent, but this is the reason I can't hate Star Trek V all that much. I know it's a terrible movie, but it's the very first movie I saw in theaters in my entire life.
No, so, I see.
I have a soft spot for it regardless of that.
How dare you do weird tangents in these episodes?
Right? So yeah, no, the new music in Abyssos does not sound like Evanescence. It sounds... I like the Lacuna Coil comparison. I think that's maybe not super accurate, but not like the end of the world either.
Yeah.
Like, I can see the through point to my mind. It is good, however. Like, I can listen to this.
Yeah, exactly. It's, like... I appreciate that the voice isn't... there just to be there in the way it was there just to be a song with lyrics in P4.
God, I will never... I don't think I will ever forgive that song, because it's just so... like, you said it best. They needed a banger for the Primals. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Mission accomplished, but you should not write a song with that in mind.
Yeah. And I like that song, again, but you gotta like be a bit... you gotta admit when you see something
bit
big
mercenary.
Like that.
It's a bit mercenary. Whereas these songs actually sound like music and they actually sound like they fit. So, So already way out of the gate, but the fights and the music are way better in P4.
And they have enough confidence to make the last song of the tier without lyrics. And it doesn't feel like a step down because of the callbacks that are entirely justified due to the story and the characters involved. And it's great.
Yeah.
That one is my favorite of the tier.
So I haven't heard P4S Phase 2, though.
Me neither. I can't comment on
did link it to me. I haven't checked the link yet, but Zeril did link it to me earlier today. So earlier today as of recording. Obviously, I'm not looking into the future when this is being posted.
Yes.
Duh, but I'm going to say it anyway, just so there's clarification.
Yeah, what I followed the raid prog of a group that hasn't reached second phase yet.
Also, I'm going to shout out the Island Sanctuary music while we're here.
Yeah. It's nice and chill.
It is nice and chill, but it's got enough energy to make you not that bored with the music, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's got that right balance. Apparently... Sorry, go on.
Okay, I think that Soken did a lot of studying when it came to... or the sound team in general did a lot of studying when it came to not only composing the track but implementing it. Because unlike most area tracks, this one does what a lot of games in the farming sim genre do, which is that sometimes there's just no music.
Yeah,
There are pauses in the loops because it's just huge hitting and taking in the vastness of the place, and if you want something more active because you're near your base camp, well, there's an orchestration right there.
Yep. I will admit, I've had Flow Together play there a couple of times. It felt like a good one to have at the base camp.
I went with that FF15 vals.
Interesting. Okay. I will say, I believe you can get a mount, a motorcycle mount, in fact, which means I'm canonically required to actually track this thing down, that plays the Island Sanctuary music as the mount music.
Yeah, and now that you say it like that, it does feel very much like generic mount music for the expansion.
Well, except we have generic mount music for the expansion, which is actually quite good.
But it still feels like one.
That's fair. You know like what I don't like about the newest patch, though?
No? Do
so there's a bunch of unreleased like music you could play in Heavensward on a mount, right?
Yeah.
So when the Faux Leaves released a new Lanner, they probably could have filled that mount with, they probably could have given it some unique music. Nope, they gave it generic Heavensward mount music. Thanks, guys. No. I'm like, I almost don't want this Lanner now. It's a Lanner. That's the birds that play the boss music. There's the other the Fiend mount gave us the actual Warring Triad music and not the terrible Fiend song, but they could give us that. They could give us 2 other phases of Dragon of Nidhogg. They could give us 2 other phases of Zervin. Nope, they gave us just generic music. That's the one mount music. That is the one music disappointment of this patch that I have. That I don't think there's a mount for Scarmiglione. There is a mount for Barbaricia, but there is not a mount for Scarmiglione.
Yeah.
And I really want a mount for Scarmiglione.
One thing I can imagine is that we're going to probably have some interesting music content for the half patch. Because given the modularity they've announced and the hardship of the content at the higher end, I can't imagine Criterion or whatever adjustable dungeon they're going to add.
Yeah.
6.25 is going to be just ambient stuff.
I am very intrigued by what they are going to do with a savage dungeon. Like, that is actually kind of wild to me.
Yes, and of course that's going to be Hildebrand, and we're going to have the same couple of songs.
I've still got to finish, like, Heavensward and Stormblood Hildebrand so I can actually, apparently, start this.
Yeah, one thing, though, and I'm going to start disrupting what little order I put up and transitioning to the next topic. One of the things that shocked me in some Genshin Impact content of the past, because they added their new region in their new big update and everything, but that's not even what I'm talking about yet.
Okay.
They had this island event, which had some very cool bits, like new battle themes that are only used in one temporary quarter area of an event, and that are really great but only exist there, which is frustrating, but the themes itself were good.
Okay.
But as for some of the events outside of the main 4 islands, like there's some boat racing and some co-op racing around and diving around and events that are frantic and festive, and they just have the same chill island music you hear everywhere else. And can you not compose a party game music? Just one? Because the game sorely needs that.
Oh no.
It needs that. A lot of events would be way less flat if they had a little bit of event music and diversity in that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Although that's not the list of Genshin's diversity problems, but that's a question for another podcast.
Yeah, that is fair. I've been following your comments on Genshin music basically throughout this podcast experience, and it seems to me they have a problem with event music, which is to say they either do too much or too little, and it never, like, I've gotten the impression that their soundtrack has never quite clicked the way it should, like...
Yeah, like, there are certainly some highs, the biggest one of which is, in my opinion, the Ashdaha battle theme, which is probably one of the best boss battle, in my opinion, at this point.
Was that the one I didn't like?
That was the phase after the one I didn't like. Didn't like.
Yes. Got it.
The one with the actual ancient Chinese choir.
Oh, okay, yeah, that does sound cool.
Yes. And so, what I'm happy with, at least, is that we have moved into a new region at this point. And my main issue with the soundtrack's content this last year, pretty much, as we went around the Inazuma region, was that it felt boring to me. Like, okay, I'm going to contrast it with the latest region because it's more complicated than the track just being bad.
Okay.
Basically, I like a lot, I'm going to go ahead and say that already, I like a lot of the tracks in the new Sumeru region. They have these nice Middle Eastern / South Asian influences corresponding to the motifs of the region, with some compositions where they got the London Philharmonic Orchestra and some actual players of instruments you can see yourself hearing in those kind of atmosphere. You've got your ouds and your sitars, and it all sounds very nice, and Port Ormuz music in particular goes really hard. Like, it's 90% of the way towards how hard the Radzat music hits.
Okay.
To give a comparison with a similar atmosphere. And that's high praise, because that tone theme is very good.
It is very good. That is accurate.
Yes. And that one is at the height, but at the same time, I have to acknowledge who I am. Namely, that I am from northeastern France, that I am very white, and that I am not, and that as a weeb, I am not exposed to as much Arabian and Indian music as I am to Japanese music.
Right.
So maybe the quality is equivalent, but that I am more bored of the Inazuma music themes because I can only hear Sakura variations so many times because I've listened to a lot of Japanese-inspired video game and anime and pop music.
That is entirely fair, and burnout is a thing when it comes to music.
Exactly.
Lord knows I even got sick of some of my favorite albums out of Overplay for a while just because I kept listening to them, and I'm like, do I really want to listen to this right now? No, I don't think I do. As much as I love it, I think I've heard enough.
Yeah, I mean, basically I have, when I want to just listen to something I like, I have this 300 plus YouTube track of just various tracks I appreciate that I add in without any particular theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I mostly listen a lot to the last 10 tracks of that playlist, and only the last 10 because I've kind of borne out on the 290 other tracks, even though they're very good.
Yeah. This is why I like the shuffle button. I have a VLC player, video game music playlist that's like 160 hours long. Like, that's how many soundtracks are in there. Probably even more, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because that's not as many albums as you'd think. And I just leave that on shuffle, and it'll just throw me all over the place. That helps alleviate burnout in no small way. It's just accepting the wide world of random.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to preserve yourself from listening to your favorite track of the moment 10 times in a day.
Yep, and if you're progging P1 through 3, you're listening to a track you don't like very often, very much, for several times a day, which add that plus burnout equals God help me.
Exactly.
Had to bring it back around there.
Yeah, no, fair. And now one last note back to Genshin,
yes, of course.
Which is that one of the things that are a little bit of a frustration regarding tracks I actually like a lot is that they have character themes or the character trailers, which are still some of the best content they put out. And they are individually very good. Colei's trailer has this bright, youthful energy, and Tignari's trailer has this much more mystical atmosphere, and it all works excellently in a vacuum. But I maybe would have appreciated a little bit more back and forth with a little more, maybe reminders of the kind of music and content you can actually listen within the game.
That makes sense.
Also, give us trailer music as the not orchestral walls, please.
Does Genshin have like a jukebox or an orchestrion thing going on? Okay.
Yes, they do, which is why I'm calling the not orchestrion, because I can't remember for the life of me what it's supposed to be
Fair
called,
enough.
But yeah, they have one for your housing system.
Cool. That's enough. I think that's fine.
Yeah, especially since they've added a nice feature, which is that you have a few tracks you can buy from a random selection of 2, but you also have a few of those tracks you find the discs for in the wild. Say you are near the Kamisato domain, and there's the track that only plays in the Kamisato domain right in there.
Okay.
So there's a bit of exploration element, and there's a bit of giving durability to a feature that's sorely needed. It's pretty well implemented. My only concern is that a lot of those tracks kind of start and sound like each other and have trouble standing out, which on one side makes sense within the nice comfy atmosphere of the Serenity part, but I mean, you know me, I fix subtleties for cowards, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, more content in that front, can't go wrong with that, and the influences, whether it's by being more involved, more regional, or just being something that I know less, they are a good time.
Right.
Now then, moving on to the next bit, there was the Splatoon 3 demo and the global test fire that happened last weekend.
I missed that entirely. Not that I've never been much of a Splatoon fan to begin with. I appreciate it more than I enjoy it.
I've played the first one and then skipped the second one deliberately because the first one's release was still kinda recent and I hadn't made the jump from the Wii U to the Switch yet. So I skipped on this one and I'm ready to jump on Splatoon 3, which is good because the changes aren't really enormous between the two games, so skipping a generation helps add a little more variation. Kind of like Pokemon games.
Fair enough. There's one thing about Nintendo. They tend to be fairly consistent with, at least their systems.
Yes.
Which is why Breath of the Wild threw me so far off, because it was clearly an experiment, but it was... I didn't think it was a successful one, but it was definitely way off the usual game for a mainline Zelda, right? Like, I think we could all agree this didn't play like any other Zelda game.
Yeah, and whether you like it or not, I think you'll be the first to admit, along with me, that it was, if nothing else, influential.
Oh, yeah. So, hearing that Splatoon remains relatively consistent is a good thing.
Yes. As for the music, they opened up by doing that little thing I love, so they already have my heart, which is that they have a tutorial level that's pretty linear. That's not the part that I love. The part that I love is that as you progress through the tutorial level, what starts as mostly a background rhythm gains instrument after instrument as you go through the different steps until by the end is this cool, festive and intense kind of busy music as you do the last bit of your tutorial, swimming along ink in the middle of a wasteland with an upside-down Eiffel Tower in the background.
Variable dynamics. Love it, love it, love it.
Very much so.
That is by far and away the one thing that makes video game entirely unique. Like, movies cannot do this. They can't. They're static.
Yeah. It makes you kind of the artisan of your own music.
Yeah.
Except it's somebody else that did it with an immense talent.
Yeah, we've talked about this at length. We did a whole episode on variable mixing and variable dynamics. Exactly. So I'm very happy to hear that it keeps coming back because it's hard to do. And I'm pretty sure that's one thing FF14 has never actually done. For all of our positive statements about the music is really just the music.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And beyond that, there's, they have their usual stylings, which is very unique in itself, with those squid sounds, fake non-lyrics, that are on paper similar in principle to the angel language used in near songs, but in practice is completely different.
Right.
And also, each game has the groups that act as kind of the MCs of the various events of the game, with Callie and Mary in the first one, Pearl and Marina in the second, and in this one I don't remember their name besides Big Man, which is a Big Manta.
Okay.
And oh yeah, Shiver, Fry, and Big Man. And they have this really cool thing during events, which was pretty much all throughout the duration of the demo in this case, where they have the entire hub town animate as they perform essentially a street concert with a chariot. They go around as the hub music changes to the main song, which is a cool mix of Japanese traditional festival and Brazilian carnival music.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a
and
combo.
Yeah, like you have the Japanese styles of a bomb with carnival whistles in the background and all of that, and the blend just works so well.
That's actually kind of awesome. I want to hear this now. I wish we had Eddie here to talk about the Brazilian Carnival music, because if anyone would have something to say about that, it's him, obviously.
That would be it.
Spoiler alert, he's from Brazil.
So yeah, pretty good stuff, and very much looking forward to the full release, which should be, if not this weekend, then next one.
Wow, that hits fast. The closed beta was 2 weeks ago, and now they're doing the full release now? Like, what's the point of the beta?
Network stress test.
I guess that makes sense, but like, usually you have beta to iron out bugs and kinks, and I guess this is Nintendo we're talking about. That's just not what they do.
Well, they call it a global test fire and not a beta, because Nintendo.
Fair enough. Okay, whatever. It's Nintendo. Nintendo's just good at Nintendo all over everything. We know how they do.
Oh, also, they still have one of their most effective piece of music composition, which is that the game is oriented around these short duration multiplayer matches that are like 3 minutes, right?
Right.
And there's different music for each stages. But the final minute has this music that are very similar in stylings, and the music bit lasts exactly 1 minute. And the end in particular is very recognizable, with an acceleration that reaches a conclusion that corresponds to the referee whistling and calling for the end of the match. And it's very well timed and gives you this instinctive sense of urgency. Even when you're not acknowledging the timer at all, you know things are about to go down, that you have to make a difference, even if it means avoiding the fight to try and ink the enemy territory and all of that. It works so well.
Yeah, that sounds really on the nose. It seems like the composer did a really good job. I'd be interested to know who the composer is. I think we're gonna have to wait on Eddie for that one. But
yep, because I'm probably going to bring it up again next episode anyway. So
I'm sure this sounds like
this time
we'll do
actual. This time we'll do actual work ahead.
There we go.
Now then, Yogo.
Okay, Soul Hackers 2 came out. This is the little game that could, as far as I'm concerned. It's the newest Shin Megami Tensei game, and it is bizarre. It's bizarre. It's bizarre in a good way, because it's like, it's one part Persona, one part Xenosaga. Yeah, no, it's got, the music especially has got some real Xeno vibes. Xenosaga vibe, specifically. Like, we're talking
Yes.
late-stage Masuda, not like the big sweeping orchestral stuff of the Xenoblade games.
Yes, these are extremely different vibes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm just going to get into the sound design a little bit very quickly. Every demon is voiced, which is awesome. This is the second time this has happened since
SMT5?
Yes. Thank you. I was about to say. Also, this is the first time in SMT history the main character is their own character and fully voiced.
Awesome.
Ringo is a person. She is voiced by Megan Harvey, who is doing an incredible job. It's something the SMT franchise sorely needed because there's still, like, variable dialogue choices, so that hasn't changed. She just actually has a personality now, which is wonderful.
Good. I never was much of a fan of a silent or quasi-silent protagonist anyway.
No, and they were kind of leaning off of it as of Persona 5. Like, Joker definitely had more of a personality than some, but he was still largely silent.
I genuinely think one of the factors that slowly inched them towards giving their protagonist a set personality were the Persona anime adaptations, because they had to pick something. I'm sure it was essentially let's just imagine what a main character that would always pick the sarcastic option would sound like. But that slowly pushed them towards a cohesive whole instead of just color your own protagonist within those lines.
Right, and I feel like they used Soul Hackers because it is a weird side story, not connected to anything else except sort of the Raido Kusunoha duology.
Yeah, so again, that lets them experiment.
That lets them experiment, exactly, so they don't come out like... They don't come out and get, like, rage from the hardcore SMT heads and make this SMT6, even though this really does feel like SMT6 so far.
Correction. They get less rage from the hardcore SMT heads.
Oh, are people actually raging? I don't know.
Not that I know of, but I'm going to assume somebody on the internet is angry.
I'm sure somebody is, but I'm hoping that's a very distant minority, because so far this game is working well. Another thing I like that they're doing, like usual, they have DLC costumes that let you play music from other games, right? But they took a page out of the Persona 5 Strikers book, which is, you can assign that independent of costumes, you can shuffle it, and you can tell them to turn off ones you don't like.
Oh, good.
So if you're like, I really don't want to hear this song, you can just turn it off and the rest will shuffle through, or just play the one you want to play. So it gives you that, like, ability to select the song you want to hear, which I absolutely love.
Options. We like them.
I'm very early into the game. I don't know who the composer is. It's almost certainly not Shoji Meguro. It doesn't sound anything like their work. I think we can pretty clearly rule him out. But I am very intrigued with what I'm hearing so far. The battle theme is pretty good. The overall stage themes are pretty good. I am very early on, and it's definitely in the SMT5 very subtle area. It hasn't really, like...
Nice.
It hasn't really ramped up the big, heavy themes yet. We will see how that goes. So far, I am very pleased with how Soul Hackers 2 music is going, and it's new SMT, which always makes me happy.
Yeah. More SMT is good.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully the end game doesn't fall apart like SMT5 did. I'm still salty about the last 2 dungeons of SMT5. They were not great.
What? An SMT game that kind of gets a bit long and needlessly cruel in the last dungeons? You don't say.
No, actually...
Well, maybe not the needless cruelty part.
Yeah, SMT5 had the exact opposite problem. The dungeons were half-finished, half-baked. You could bypass puzzles entirely, and most of the enemies were too easy for words.
Okay, I didn't know that was that bad in that direction.
Yeah,
the comparison with the final dungeon in... well, the final 2 sub-dungeons in Persona 5 Original doesn't stand then. Seems like the opposite problems.
Yeah, no, I want an SMT Final Dungeon to kick my ass. And SMT5 did not do that at all. I slept through those dungeons. It was really bad.
Or, at least, do the Valkyrie profile route of having an optional final dungeon that's there specifically to hand your ass on a plate.
I'd be fine with that. That would have worked well as well, I think. But yeah, going into... Yeah, I'm hoping Soul Hackers 2 doesn't repeat that problem. I feel like...
Just don't put blatant Star Ocean music in it.
But that song's really good. Mission to Deep Space is a great song. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's good, but... Come on!
What? No, I will not come on. I love that song. What are you doing? I will absolutely take it for Seraphic Gate. If they don't have it in Valkyrie Elysium, I'm going to be disappointed.
For parts of Seraphic Gate, I'm okay with it. For the whole of it, and it's probably the single one place you're going to spend the most time in the game if you're going to do the post-game as well. Okay, I think in a weird way, it gives me kind of the same problem that the original... what's the name of the Persona 5 Underground?
Mementos.
Mementos, yes. It's giving me that, but with a very different theme, with very different energy to it.
A very different energy is kind of an understatement. Those songs are about as diametrically opposed as you can get in video game music.
Yes, but all issues are kind of the same.
Okay, I don't know how to argue this point with you because I'm just so baffled by it.
Then let's move on to the next talking point.
I will say this much before we move on. Valkyrie Anatomia's version of Mission to Deep Space was awesome. Okay, now we're moving on.
Oh yes, it was.
What is next?
It absolutely was.
So what the heck is a Groove Coaster?
A Groove Coaster is a series of rhythm games that started on mobile phones and still exist there, but also released on the Switch, not recently, just that I purchased it recently, and that I find it interesting because, okay, of course, as a video game music podcast, talking about rhythm games is a bit particular because we enjoy talking about the kind of music only video games are good at, and rhythm games are the genre where you can put any music and it works perfectly.
Right.
Well, that's not quite true. You can't really put ambient music, but basically my point is that you can put most pop songs in there and it would work.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it works equally well, and that all rhythm games work the same way to make you look at that music in a specific way. I'm going to give a comparison point because I have a few rhythm games on my Switch, and another one I have is a couple of Taiko no Tatsujin games.
Okay.
So in these, you play the drums, and I took the Undertale music pack, which will be an excellent point of comparison. And so I start my Undertale song, whatever it is, and I have classic Taiko no Tatsujin decorations and do the drums on those. Meanwhile, in Groove Coaster YY Party's Deltarune and Undertale music pack, I fire up the same song, and I'm getting a different experience because you follow along this line and you do inputs, and there's these ad-libs moments which are invisible notes that you find just by following the flow and thinking I should press a button there even if there is nothing. The game encouraging you this way to kind of immerse yourself in the music and not only rely on hitting the notes you see as they go. Plus, the background plays a very important role to, like in the Bone Trousel in particular, which is the Papyrus fight theme. You have moments where they do cute things like you press an up input and the line goes in a jump curve as bones hit you under, making it look like you just jump over the same attack you would jump over in the game the music comes from. And it really helps you kind of in this trance-like state that rhythm games tend to put you on. Look at the music in a different way. Pay attention to specific notes since you have to time your inputs to them. And I genuinely think that I wouldn't enjoy analyzing and talking about video game music half as much if I didn't play so much Stepmania back in my days.
That's a fair point. I will admit my experience with rhythm games is kind of limited to Rock Band and Dragon Guard, which that second one kind of doesn't count, but also has to count.
Yes.
And then, so I don't quite have the same, like, I didn't come from the DDR land, I didn't come from any of that to the same degree, but I definitely respect, like, I understand the formula, right? Like, I understand the arrows coming down and you gotta hit them on time. So the fact that this one seems to encourage you to be a little more, as you say, immerse yourself into the music instead of being so interface-based is actually, I actually like that a lot, because that gives more love to the music and not just the system.
Yeah, exactly. And I think your point of view on this is really cool to me, because I think it's kind of, you're in the same space that I am when I see visual novels, where I think it's like my point of view is somewhere between why wouldn't I just read the book and the difference from one game to the next should be minimal at best. And it's only by getting immersed in the genre that you can really feel the differences between how this game works and how that game works, how Osu was designed versus how Stepmania was designed.
Makes sense.
And that's why I am hoping that I will manage to push a rhythm game episode one of those days.
I wouldn't mind. I just, you know, again, my personal my personal experience is very limited in that regard, so I'd end up almost having to cheat, which is not great, just because I am so limited on what I've experienced in that genre. So
yeah, no, that's fair. But I know what to do when I have 300,000 points next on your channel.
Oh boy. That price is coming down, by the way. That proved to be too much.
I see.
So, unfortunately, like, while Des did clog up a ridiculous amount of my pick-a-game,
yes,
my current pricing schedule is actually pricing out everybody else. So we're seeing the downsides of capitalism at work here, so I've got to adjust the price in such a way that still makes it impossible for Des to completely clog me up, but at the same time gives other people a chance to actually succeed. The rich get richer.
Price out more than the 1%.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway, alright, I wanted to briefly touch on Before the Storm as well. Because I don't think they've added new music content. But there was a video that came out that I found interesting.
Okay.
By the composer, which talked a bit about the music making process for the game.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's more involved than I thought, with shorter musical phrases, intermingling, and having to find the right type of instruments for the right type of characters, how they ended up having to pick between focusing on emphasizing the species that are involved or the season, which is what they run with in the end. Yeah, I like it when composer just give us some food for thought. So I wanted to shout out that video in the Before the Storm YouTube channel. That's like 20 minutes and it's pretty cool.
Right on.
Alright, my favorite part is that we talked about music fatigue, and given that it's a roguelike city builder where you start from the beginning a lot of times, music fatigue was a real concern, maybe one of the first ones. And one of the things they did when they noticed the music was a bit too present was, okay, instead of throwing all that was done away, let's just slow things down by 50%, and this way, by this one simple trick, we can gain 11 minutes of music composed.
That is risky. I'm not sure how much I like that, but at the same time, good for them for figuring out a solution?
Yeah, no, like, the thing with that is that it worked.
That's not common.
Yes. So yeah, that was some good content, and I liked when the Risk of Rain composer talked about his music. I like when the Before the Storm composer talks about his.
Totally understandable. Yeah, no, see, hearing that insight is always, you know, always fascinating to get into the mind of a composer.
Exactly.
Although, on the other hand, sometimes you end up with one interview that I watched where the guy was like, I don't remember what I did, I was just there for the money. And I'm like, thanks? Thank you?
Amazing.
So, I guess it takes all kinds. So, I'm glad there's actual insight there and not whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, no, that said, I like also the insight on the tracks for some Atelier games, where they have short blurbs on the jukebox you get when you finish the game, with things like just jiggering and we didn't plan this music to be used in this context at all, but here we go, and basically all the shuffling around that goes with a series that has a near-yearly release. Very insightful. Now then, Arknights.
Okay, so I'm not actually going to talk very much about Arknights in-game music right now. I'm going to say that we have a new contingency contract, and that usually has some kind of banger as the lobby theme. I don't actually remember this lobby theme that much, which is not a good sign. It sounds like low-rent Star Set a little bit, but, like, that's my only note on it. What I am going to say is very recently they announced the second Ambient Synesthesia concert series. Which will be streaming live around the world in October. Gotta love anytime a mobile game has music so out there that they have to announce 4 different kinds of concerts at a single festival just to cover the various genres of the game. So you got, like, the techno cyberpunk, and they did an image with a bunch of characters in some really cool outfits that will never be skins. How dare they? They have, like, the traditional Chinese and even traditional Japanese in there, so they have a bunch of characters and skins that we're never going to get. How dare you?
Oh, so that's the 4 pictures collage I saw.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the classical music, which actually will give us some skins for Mudrock, another girly dress for her, because apparently that's what happens with her now. But yeah, the fact that they have to go through all these different styles and create a promo art for all of them, the fact that they are announcing a concert, the fact that, once again, this is a low to mid-budget mobile game. God, I love Arknights music.
Yeah, I thought as well that them releasing 16 skins at once would be a little crazy.
Yeah, sadly we're only getting 3 of them, despite a couple of them being awesome. And I'm like, can we please have this? Yeah. Even a couple of the classical ones we are not getting are like, but Salish has a great one. Can we get that, maybe?
Hey, look, I get it. Meanwhile, in Genshin, we don't have. We still don't have the skins for the KFC collab they did, and we don't have either a similar situation with a Pizza Hut collab they did.
So, there's actually a reason for this. Because of Arknights, I actually know the reason, because the only collab we haven't gotten is KFC.
Yeah.
So, China's KFC is owned by someone completely different than the international brand.
Huh.
So it creates basically a legal nightmare for any Chinese KFC collab to make it out of China at all.
I see.
I actually know the answer to that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that's the same situation with Pizza Hut then.
Probably. I feel like they must be owned by the same people in China.
Yeah, I imagine there's a situation with ownership having to be local due to laws in China.
Yeah. Then again, they do have a lot of international brands there. I think it's just the way the franchises are set up. Because I know KFC in particular is a franchise brand, so I'm pretty sure you know what, I could speculate on this until I blew in the face. The fact is the ownership and corporate structure of KFC in China is totally different from the rest of KFC. And as a result...
Welcome to Music Arcade, your #1 podcast for international copyright law.
So yeah, no, we've gotten some cool, we've gotten every crossover so far, including a traditional Chinese animation crossover in the form of 9-Color Deer very recently, which includes Chinese-only voiceover. That leads us, but we have not gotten KFC, and people are still raging about that, despite that being the only one. We also recently got a Capcom crossover, quote-unquote which mostly has just been random acts of Monster Hunter and our character art, and a random Rhodes Island symbol somewhere in the world in Monster Hunter Rise.
Huh, weird.
Yes, but we now know for a fact that Kirara, a character, plays Monster Hunter. We know this. This is now canon. Shrug?
Okay, good.
Sure.
Good. Happy for you.
Yes. Anyway, while I mentioned voiceover real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and bring this up because it's still sound-related. English voiceover for a number of characters just released. They're using a largely British cast, so there are 2 different major characters from FF14 who have actors who made it over here, and that is Emma Ballantine, who played Reen. She's actually the voice of Amiya. And then Rosie Day, who played Medion, is voicing Platinum. So there's that little bit of crossover there. Generally speaking, I like...
No, that reminds me that before getting into Groove Coaster, I checked out Citus 2 on mobile because I tested a few apps for this new phone I've got. This seemed like a right fit. And yeah, there was that Arknights music pack in there that took me by surprise. Like, I checked the characters, each character essentially being a playlist. Yep. And, oh, hello, Amiya, what are you doing there?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that crossover, and it just didn't click in my mind. Unfortunately, I really should have brought that up way sooner until you showed that off, and I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
I remember this now. Generally, I do like the English voices so far. They're not perfect. And they had a thing recently where they were trying to hire a voiceover coordinator, which makes me think their original voiceover coordinator either wasn't up to the job or got sacked or was a producer who took on too much. So we'll see how that goes. I know this isn't voiceover arcade, but yes.
Yeah.
I know this isn't voiceover arcade, but it's sound design related. I wanted to at least shout it out that much of the English language voiceover is actually quite good.
No, this is a serious episode for a serious podcast, but music only and no tangents.
Darn. Okay, what can we talk about music-wise? 2 Point Campus, let's go.
Okay, 2 Point Campus. They have music.
They have music. It's better than 2 Point, it's better than 2 Point Hospital. Like, I don't feel the immediate need to turn it off and just start playing synthwave.
I feel like that might come up eventually. But,
it might come up eventually, but it didn't get there nearly as fast as 2 Point Hospital did.
Yes.
Generally speaking, the tracks are the same kind of bouncy, kind of fun, like, just general kind of like elevator music sound. I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
It is. And still, I appreciate that they have a few differences in the in-game bands that you can actually invite in your student union to perform concerts.
Yeah,
and when
I thought
you
that
pause
was
the
cool.
game, you can see which band is performing which music.
Yeah.
Even outside of the concert. That's nice. I just wish the personalities of the different music themes was way more distinct, because it all blends together in that elevator soup.
You know, it's funny. I was talking about this on stream. Once Sega bought Atlas, there's been this weird, like, cross-pollination between Yakuza and SMT. But the 2 Point games, which are also published by Sega, have not received any of that. Like, they've just been off in their own little world and haven't really taken advantage of Sega's, you know, being very willing to allow, like, some, not quite cross-promotion, but at least cross-pollination.
So what you're saying is that you want to start a tournament on the jousting grounds and for your jousting classes, and suddenly hear da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, as Kuze runs at you in a bike.
I mean, let's be honest, that would be pretty cool, right? Like, I gotta be honest, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yes. That would be a better shout-out than just having a Sonic or a Crazy Taxi arcade cabinet.
And it's not like that Crazy Taxi arcade cabinet is playing All I Want by The Offspring, okay? It's
exactly.
not. So...
Cowards.
Right? I mean, you call them cowards, but that's gotta be a licensing nightmare at this point. I've gotta be honest.
Yes, which is why it's funny to call them cowards, because it's obviously not that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like the music. I don't love it, and it's probably going to tire on me eventually, but again, it doesn't send me running for the hills like poor 2 Point Hospital did. So, yeah, good job, 2 Point Campus. You're a very 6 out of 10 soundtrack as opposed to a 4 out of 10. Good job.
Exactly.
You pass. You get a passing grade, 2 Point Campus.
I mean, let's put it in local terms. You get a B instead of a C.
Actually, I gave it a D instead of an F.
All right. That's harsher than the other numerical values, but all right.
Yeah, in American, 60 is a D, 70 is a C, 80 is a B, 90 and above is an A.
All right.
So, and 40 is just get wrecked.
Hey, look, we name our grades up to 10 for primary school, and on a 20 scale at middle schools and beyond, so that makes no sense either.
I don't think school at all makes sense. You know what else doesn't make sense? Metal Max.
The fact that Metal Max is unknown.
Yeah,
because it's an amazing game and an amazing series.
I've heard the name, I don't know much about it. Is that another one of those mecha games?
No.
Okay.
What it is, okay, I'm going to describe some element of one of the games.
Please.
And I have a point for that. It's a bit non-musical related, but I have to get it out of my chest.
Right, because we can't have tangents on this episode now, can we?
Exactly. I'm glad you understand. So, JRPG in concept, but make it open world.
Okay.
Make it with actual quality of life situations like control of animation speed.
Always like that.
Yeah, make it pretty lenient on the punishment where you have no way to ever game over. Even if your entire party wipes, you just get resurrected at the local mad scientist.
Okay, that's fair.
Tanks, of course, and other vehicles, which are tank adjacent. And very open world. Like, they made it a point that aside from one check early in the game to make sure that you have at least one tank, you can go straight to the end game right away. or just dink around, try to solve the city's local issues, or just ignore them completely and move on.
Okay, so this is Morrowind, but with tanks.
And on an NES.
So this is better than anything Bethesda has ever produced, but with tanks.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Better ever developed.
And
I don't want to say ever
tanks.
produced, but ever developed.
Yes. And the first game came out in 1991 on the NES, and apparently, what does this game has? Rock influences, post-apocalyptic setting, tanks. No way the West will ever like that. Don't localize it.
How is that not a slam dunk? Then again, Japan in the 90s. What do you want from me?
Exactly. Like the first game in the series we got was from the side series where they started getting it in full 3D, Metal Saga, on the PS2.
On the PS2?
And there was like 3 games before that.
Wow.
Plus remakes. And that's the one I'm playing currently. It's a fun translation of the DS remake to the second game that was originally on the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's very good. It's also very open, and with most of the qualities that I've mentioned, it does have a few more checkpoints. Like, you actually have to defeat the first of the 4 lieutenants of the main antagonist gangs before you can get across a bridge and to the rest of the world map. But no, it's very open and it's very cool. I will say that the actual tanks do take a while to get there, because like right now I'm 20 hours into the game, and my main team is a dog on a tiny dog-sized car, a character that's a pilot inside of a armored vehicle, which is the most tank-like I have. I have a tamed bus that before that was returned to the wilds, because it's a network of radio-controlled buses that don't have any inputs anymore, and so became a wild herd of buses again. And I have a Harley, which is the first vehicle you can get, actually.
Big thumbs up for me. Certainly not going to argue with a Harley.
Exactly. And base do have a very particular spot, because that means that you can still shoot your normal human guns from it if you want.
How very Grand Theft Auto.
I know, right? But as far as the music goes, one of the main things to emphasize the importance vehicles have is that you have a world map theme for when you're on foot, which is a kind of Dragon Quest-like. We'll come back to that. And when you get on board vehicles, suddenly it gets way heavier. Like you go for because that's the sound of you rolling around ready to shoot your cannon at any of the weird, oddly weaponized fauna that you run around.
Okay.
Also, the version of that sound that's on the NES version has that cowbell as a background drum, and it's very cute.
Needs more cowbell. Got it.
Yes. And they've changed a lot of the themes throughout the game, but there's one theme in particular that they have never changed throughout the entire series, side games included, because it was perfect in the first game, and it is still perfect, which is the battle against the Wanted. And that's just this fast-paced rock track that's very frantic and awesome, and I love it. I think I actually talked about that in a previous episode, in fact. Maybe even the first one.
This sounds vaguely familiar, but we'd have to go back through our notes to see for sure.
Yes, and hope the episode in the playlist wasn't deleted, which is more than likely.
Yeah, that's been a problem. Yes. We may be able to find it in the archive of our production orders, though.
Maybe. Although... Okay, first, about the archives on the production order, we didn't start doing those immediately, I don't think. And also, one of the things that may be a saving grace for the soundtrack's ability to stay on the places it's uploaded to is that... so okay, background, some more for the first game. It has a point. The game was essentially developed, as you might imagine, by somebody who wanted to make different RPGs for what was coming out at the times.
Right.
And that's for a very good reason, which is that one of the leads worked before on Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Dragon Quest being a series that hasn't changed even today. So, seeing somebody that was fed up in 1991 and wanting to make the exact opposite as much as possible is pretty funny in itself.
Right? And here we are, 30 years later, and Dragon Quest is still very much Dragon Quest.
Yes. Like, don't get me wrong, 11 was great in its way, but Dragon Quest is... agonizingly Dragon Quest.
It's not a series known for innovation.
Exactly. Which is why somebody decided, I'm going to make my own games and I'm going to make them as different as possible.
Which, I mean, it's a hipster way of looking at it. That's also very risky, right? Like, if you're making the opposite of something, you're still kind of dependent on that thing.
Yes. But one of the steps they took, besides the whole make a game that has concept in it that 20 years later would still be called innovative,
right,
is that they got another composer, which is great by itself because of the whole issues regarding Dragon Quest's composer.
Right.
And also because that kinda contributes to Metal Max's identity as a bit of an oddity. Because the composer still works on the Metal series to this day, and for no other video games.
Interesting.
Yeah, they worked 30 years on the series on no other games.
So what do they do for a living then?
I think they do compose music, but not game music.
So TV, commercial spots, radio...
Maybe individual albums, I'm not certain. And this is a YOLO show, we don't do our researches.
That is fair. We're once again just going to have to leave that to Eddie. Boy,
yes.
it's
I did that part of the research that told me that there's the composer that was different and that did that, but going in depth was certainly complicated because given that it's a series that hasn't come to the West for a while, the main source of information is a video game magazine's interview from the early 1990s. Only in Japanese, of course.
Of course.
It would be way too easy otherwise.
Right?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't a recent Metal Max game get cancelled?
Yes, correct.
I thought I heard that.
I don't remember which Metal side game it was, but there was one that was cancelled. There are a couple that are on Steam. However, Metal Max Xeno, which is a port of a game that was on the PS3, I want to say, but that apparently is a little buggy and took some features out, so there's some controversy, but it's probably the closest you're going to get to a normal MetaMax on Steam. And then there's another spin-off series, which is Metal Dogs, which is currently in early access, and is a top-down shooter where you play a dog. And you fight tanks.
This is a weird franchise, but I kind of love it.
Yes. Yes, it is. And yes, I do love it as well. Shoutouts to the reason I even discovered that at all, because originally the only thing from the franchise I knew was, oh hey, it's a JRPG with tanks, and that was music that is very good. But I learned of it from the Twitch streamer Dino, whose content is, I would say, a third terrible, horrible garbage game, a third well-known game from well-known franchises on terrible, horrible supports you've never heard of, and one third absolute gems you don't know how you've never heard of them before.
This guy sounds like very inspired by Proton John.
Possibly. His Twitter is mostly fighting game bugs.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, shoutouts to Dino, DNO just. And let's move on to another thing I've discovered in full on stream, although I heard of it a lot more, which is Live Alive. Or Live Alive, or however you pronounce it.
I've always pronounced it Live Alive, but who the heck knows? I don't.
I don't either. And it's not like they say there is that moment in game where suddenly you go, wow, you could say that this is really a situation where we must live alive. Because now the game has voice acting, because there was a Switch HD 2D remake.
I'm marginally interested in that, largely for the historical value, but the last time I played a game entirely for historical value was a Saga game, and I hated that so much that I'm terrified to do it again.
Well, this one, from what I've seen, seems like it would be less of a risk because of its structure as essentially 7
short
2 to 5
games,
hour long JRPGs.
Yep.
Each with their own differences. One of them not being that at all. Like there's a far future horror story. There's a modern, essentially shonen anime. There's another modern one that's not even having you move at all. You just fight 6 successive opponents and then a final boss, and you learn techniques from the opponents, which means the order you fight them in matters as you learn their techniques. There's also an entire section that's literally a fight and you prepare for it.
I've heard this compared to Cloud Atlas, but without the racism.
Well, I don't know about Cloud Atlas.
I liked that movie in spite of itself, but it was definitely, it had some very, the racism arguments are not invalid. Those are actually very like, why did you do this?
Yes. And I wouldn't say it's entirely devoid of it, but
no, it's a Japanese game from the 90s, again.
Yes, with a part in ancient China.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say it's not a main point, and the sexism hides the racism because it's more present.
That, again, Japanese game from the 90s.
Yes. But hey, there's a caveman story where there's no words because language hasn't been invented. That
does sound cool. You know what should sound cool? I know the original was composed by Yoko Shimomura, but I don't know if she did the arrangements on this one.
I don't know either.
Okay.
I think so. But that may be something I've... like, It rings a bell, but I'm not 100% sure that she did.
I mean, if it started as her, it's going to sound like her, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, there's only so much arranging can do to hide that.
Exactly. And one of the main features is that, of course, because those 7 stories are very distinct, they have very distinct music, except the final boss theme is the same. And so it has this climactic feel to it, and is interesting in that essentially it has to be a very complicated music to be able to fit equally well a final Western showdown and a far future fight against a rogue AI and a fight of 4 cavemen versus a giant dinosaur.
Yeah, that definitely does sound like you'd have to have one heck of a song to match all of those.
Yeah. And the result is Megalomania. And yes, with an M. And yes, that was one of the 2 main inspirations for the more known these days Megalovania.
Which is, like, the one song from that game I genuinely like. Which isn't even from that game. Apparently it predates it, but...
Yes. It was from Earthbound fan game at first.
Yeah, I will admit that at this point the fandom has completely turned me off to Undertale, so, like...
Understandable.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what doesn't have a ominous, overbearing fandom that turns you off? Live Alive, or Live Alive, or Live Alive, or Live Alive Evil.
Or, you know, the thing you just said.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean... Early Shimamura, not that late Shimamura is bad, because what was her most recent soundtrack? Probably Kingdom Hearts 3, right?
I don't know.
Either way, she is like one of the most consistently good composers in the entire industry. So...
Yes.
Like, I talk about my immense respect for her a lot, for good reason.
Right, so, confirmed, she did the orchestration for the Live Alive HD 2D remake.
So, if nothing else, even if I don't track down the game itself, I should almost certainly track down the soundtrack.
Yes.
I doubt I will be disappointed.
The last one listed was apparently Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope with Grant Kirkhope and Gareth Coker.
Yeah, that's another thing I absolutely love about her, is she will work internationally. You got a lot of these Japanese composers who will just stay in Japan and only work with Japanese, like, units. But you have...
And then you have Yoko Shimamura, whose previous title is Synchronical, which I've never heard of, and whose title before that is Xuanyan Sword 7. In which she composed 1 track.
And she composed a track for Streets of Rage 4, and she, you know, did a version of Apocalypse's Noctis at Abbey Road Studios in England with, you know, an actual English chorus.
Exactly.
Like, I greatly appreciate how worldwide she is.
Yoko Shimamura gives me a big, let's just have some fun with this energy.
She does, which is really amazing for someone who's been working in this industry since the late 80s.
Exactly.
Like, a lot of those guys
First game was Samurai Sword in 1988.
Wow. That is ages ago.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old.
I was 2 years old.
Wow. That is saying someone. That is saying something. We have a person who has been working effectively as long as either of us have been alive in game music and is still consistent and capable and putting out great work every time.
And who 3 years in her career made the Street Fighter II soundtrack.
Which is one of the best soundtracks ever made.
Exactly.
Like, I would still argue that's my favorite.
As well.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that even that I would argue she peaked way back then and yet still comes across as ridiculously awesome. Says something.
Yes.
Like, I can't say that about Nobuo Uematsu. I can't.
Exactly.
Like,
I can say that about Sakuraba. I can't.
No, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Sakuraba hasn't put out a good soundtrack since Dark Souls 1. Like, not as a whole.
Possibly.
And then...
Not as good as that. Or as different from his main core of work.
Yeah. The fact that you guys have heard me kind of complaining about his recent work says a lot, because he's done a lot of good for video games. But man, he is just not really doing it lately. Shimamura, on the other hand, continues to. So, shout out to being consistently awesome for 35 years.
Like, consistently awesome and consistently diverse in the work.
Yeah!
But sometimes it's nice to return to some things we've heard, especially if we haven't heard of them a lot recently. Let's talk about that one Kickstarter double feature, shall we?
Let's talk about the fact that a few months ago, maybe even a year ago, we did an episode entirely on Yoshitaka Hirota, an underrated composer of the Shadow Heart series.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about this Kickstarter double feature, spiritual successors to Wild Arms, a series that I, by and large, don't really care about, but I at least respect.
Same.
And Shadow Hearts. And one of the first things they said was, yes, we're bringing Hirota back. And they released some intro tracks.
It was confirmed before the release, but they have confirmed it on their Kickstarter page.
Including music from him.
Yep. And that's Hirota music, alright.
So the first thing I noticed was the battle theme was called, what was it, Vicious 1923?
Yes.
Which is a direct take on the Shadow Hearts battle track, Vicious 1915.
Exactly.
It's so good!
Again, taking a leaf out of Bloodstain's booklet, might as well not even try to hide your influences, right?
This is almost a good thing. Like, I've been kind of begging for more Shadow Hearts
I'm saying
for ages.
that positively.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's hard to rip off yourselves.
Exactly.
So just making a new game of this vein, just... It's hard for me to say how much this makes me happy. I ordered a new, I pledged. I did it. I took the risk and pledged the Kickstarter.
That's literally the last thing you did before the free show.
Yeah, I literally am like, hey, do you have a link to the... I thought they were two separate Kickstarters. I didn't realize they were 2 for 1. I literally am like, hey, do you have a link for me? And he's like, here. And I'm like, let's just do this and buy the soundtrack and the art book while I'm at it.
You're gonna do it anyway, might as well do it now.
I'm going to do it anyway, may as well do it now. You are 100% correct.
Yeah, and I do want to give some shoutouts to the other parts, because while I haven't played any Wild Arms game, I know and enjoy my Noriyasu Agematsu from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and before that, Care of Springs.
Yeah, Ranakel and I met in the Brave Exvius fandom, so
exactly.
I definitely have a healthy respect for the music of that game. And I remember at a fan fest, I actually heard some of those tracks live, which was amazing.
Oh, and I really hope that the game will let him stretch his legs, because he does some good work when he can do that. He can go in some weird places as well. Like, not in comparison to Hirota, of course, but some of those Chaos Ring tracks go places.
They do. You've put on some Chaos Rings before, and they have done some weird stuff that I do appreciate.
Exactly. And so I hope there will be more to the Fantasia soundtrack than a lot of whistling, because boy do these tracks love their whistling. I know it's cowboys, but come on, chill.
I did play a few Wild Arms games. I played Wild Arm 3, which is kind of considered the best one of the series. I say kind of because I have heard dissenting opinions, but generally speaking, people are like, that's the good one, and I get it. That was a good game. And then I played I played the remake of the first game in the third game's engine, which I got through most of, but once I realized that the secret characters were all stupidly hard to get and bad, that's when I kind of had to just stop. Like, the worst blue mage in history.
Oh.
You could get 100 and something skills, all of which were useless, and why wouldn't you just use the regular character you could put on your team anyway?
Ouch.
It was really bad. Like, I'm not even joking when I say how useless she was as a blue mage. I'm like, oh, wow, you really messed up here.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Blue mages are cool when they work, which is 90% of the time.
This was the 1% they didn't. Another case of the 1% where they didn't would be Bravely Default 2, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
God, Beastmaster in that game was just not good. I'm moving on.
Wait, Beastmaster was broken, but not because of the skills.
Oh, no, it had some cool, like, passives that were great. Yeah,
yeah, but... no, basically it was a stat stick.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But, yeah, anyway, I'm moving on before we get into a discussion about Bravely Default 2.
Let's.
Yeah, so, yeah, between Hirota coming back for more Shadow Hearts, and I'm just calling it what it is, plus, you know, yes. I'm not disappointed with the idea of a new Wild Arms.
Yeah, like, for the fans, good on them, and if we get our grubby little hands on that, and the result is a good game, all the better.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm all in on the Shadow Hearts side. Shocker, I know. And the early Hirota music definitely is a part of that, because, oh man, those soundtracks.
Yeah.
Even Shadow Hearts 3, which is wildly derided, has a great soundtrack. The
man can do no wrong.
I'm not sure that's the case. It's kind of a situation where he hasn't done enough to do wrong. It's sort of an anti-Okabe. Which is to say, we've seen Keiichi Okabe put out essentially some of the best music on the planet, but also put out some real crap. Hirota hasn't really been given the chance to do the crap. So we don't know if he can do crap. He just doesn't get hired enough, which is a real shame, and I'm glad he's back. I said at the end of our Hirota episode, please hire this man, and someone did, and it's far so good.
Also, he won't be alone on the what's that name again? Penny something? Penny Blood.
Penny Blood.
Yeah, he's also working with Akari Kaida.
I don't know that name.
Which has worked along Yoshino Aoki on Breath of Fire 3.
Okay.
And also, there's one for Eddie, Mega Man Battle Network OST.
Oh, okay.
Also, one of the stages in Mega Man 10 was one of the 4 composers for Okami.
Okay.
And some console version arrangements of Street Fighter Alpha.
Wow, so I'm... Huh.
Basically, lot of
I have
work
managed
with
to avoid
Yoshino
every
Aoki,
single game, essentially, except Street Fighter Alpha, this composer has done. Yeah, she seems like a real character.
Impressive.
Excuse me for a second.
No problem.
But that is a fairly healthy list. I will say, one way or the other, I am looking forward to both of these games. One a little more than the other. Yeah, I'm very intrigued by this Kickstarter, and I hope it doesn't become a disaster like Unsung Story did, which is starting to become not a disaster, I guess.
Yeah, but it's given me reasons to be confident. Like, the fact that they have a realistic deadline of 2.5 years in the future is already pretty good. The fact that it looks like that's a Kickstarter double feature because they're going to use the same engine for both games and will share development resources. Sounds like a good idea to make things actually happen. And yeah, it's inspiring confidence and it looks like an excellent way to give money to Hirosa and Agematsu and others.
Yeah. And the fact that they're bringing both of these guys back, both of whom have a long history of very good work. I know I'm beating this point with a hammer, but it has to be said. This sort of thing just makes me happy. It gives me some hope for the world at large. Because, man, people are still creating some really awesome stuff, and the more we get of that, the better.
Yeah, we do need some of that hopium a little.
Just a bit.
And if video game music is the one to provide it to us, who are we to argue?
Who are we to argue? And that is all the time we have for this episode. As a reminder, you can check out the songs mentioned in our episode at our YouTube channel, and can also get in touch with us via email at music.arcade.podcast@gmail.com or on Discord. The link will be in the episode description. Thank you for joining us in this random episode of random big old now playing just nonsense.
Well, we just happened to chance on some pretty cool talking points because we've been playing a lot of good stuff.
We've been playing a lot of good stuff, and let's hope we keep playing a lot of good stuff because, man, what a year this has been so far. Have yourselves a good one, guys, and we'll see you next episode, hopefully with an Eddie again.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. See you guys.
See ya.